All right, guys, welcome back to Flying with Jace, the Navigation Basics. Welcome to Chapter 2, VTC, the VNC, the WAC, the ERC. What map is it and when do I use it? This is going to be a quick discussion on the many maps that you're going to see as part of your navigation training. It's going to give you an example of the maps, talk about what we use them for and when we would expect to use them. All right, the very first one, the VTC, the Visual Terminal Chart. As the name suggests, it's based around the terminal areas. Now, this is 1 to 250,000, so when you're using it, make sure that you're using the correct scale to measure distance. As you can see from the chart, and this is the chart of all the VTCs available, it's associated with your main controlled areas. There's not much out here in the non-controlled area space at all. It's designed for people within controlled airspace or within particularly busy airspace to have the highest possible detail. Now it shows all of your PRDs, or your prohibited, restricted and danger areas. Every single one of them is marked within that area. It's got things like VFR lanes to follow. It's got all of your controlled airspace steps, all of your boundaries. It's also got the highest possible detail for terrain and things like roads and rivers and lakes and stuff. So this is your highest quality map as far as navigation is concerned. It only covers a small area. They're quite big maps to physically use in the cockpit. As with everything, check validity. Now, if you're using the paper version, all right, you'll see when your map is effective, and you'll also see when the next amendment is due. So you'll be able to tell if it's valid. These are all available for free download on the Air Services Australia site if you choose to use that. But if you use a paper copy, you need to check the validity. The next one is the VNC, and I've picked the VNC here for the same area around Brisbane. Now, as you can see, the VNC is 1 to 500,000. It has most of the prohibited, restricted and danger areas. It has most of the geographical data, but it's a much bigger map. This map in the cockpit is enormous. 1 is to 500,000, you do start to lose a little bit of detail, but it covers areas, and you can see the areas it actually covers. It covers a lot more areas than the VTC, and most of the east of Australia is covered by VNCs. You can see that goes out as far as Oakey there, and this one map goes from Brisbane to Gladstone, almost to Rockhampton. So most of the areas there, you can see danger areas are in there, your controlled airspace is in there. Most of your information on your prohibited, restricted and danger areas are there. Once again, check the validity. The online ones are not much good for actual nav planning, but if you want to get in and look at something, the online maps are available. That's the VNC, or Visual Navigation Chart, and we'll be using those a lot as part of your nav training. The World Aeronautical Chart. Okay, that covers the rest of the country. As the name suggests, World Aeronautical Chart, there's actually aeronautical coverage of this chart worldwide. They're all in 1 is to 1,000,000 scale. Okay, they have no airspace at all. So none of your prohibited, restricted, danger areas. They have major airports, major aviation navigation facilities, but they have no airspace, no restricted areas marked on them at all. They are great for your initial planning because they're, working on them, they're quite a small map. You cover a long distance quickly. The data's pretty good, so they're good for your initial planning. Where am I going? What does it look like? Or in-flight diversions, where you want to draw lines on maps and measure distances fairly quickly. They are, however, not regularly updated. This is the current WAC as of today, and you'll notice, okay, it was made in 2019 with magnetic variation, and we'll get to that in a minute, from 2015. So these maps are not updated very often, and what you'll find is big towers will pop up, lakes will get added, things that may not be on your map. They'll be covered in a NOTAM, which can be very, very hard to find, but you'll get things pop up on these or get things pop up in the world that aren't on these maps. I should have pointed out, if we look at our VNC here, remember those isogonals we talked about? There's the isogonals marked on here. you'll find those also marked on the World Aeronautical Chart. There's one there. So those isogonals we talked about last time. Next one, the en route chart. Okay, these are predominantly designed for IFR flight. Okay, en route chart low. There is a high version that the airliners use. Let's not worry about those. The scale. These maps are not to scale at all. So don't use them for flight planning. Don't try to measure the distance from there to there and expect it to be the same as any other map, and you'll get odd scales on there. They cover the entire country, okay, and they're designed to be used in conjunction with a WAC for flight planning. So if we go back to our WAC, we've got no airspace information here at all, okay, nothing at all. And if we were in the area out here around Woomera, we'd just be looking at a WAC. We'd have no idea that all of these restricted airspace are in here, okay, all this restricted airspace for military bombing and rocket launches and stuff. You wouldn't know that from the WAC. So if you're operating in an area that's covered only on a WAC, it isn't on a VNC or a VTC, you'll need to pull out or download, again, these are all available online, the en route chart low, and just have a look in case there are prohibited, restricted, or danger areas that affect you. They also point out the main airfields and airfield information with relation to them. I wouldn't suggest go out and buy a set for VFR navigation, but know how to find them online on the Air Services Australia website. And again, naturally check their validity. The last one that you're going to see, and this one's a little obscure, is called the Planning Chart Australia, or the PCA. I don't even know that they still produce a paper copy of this. Again, it's available online. What the PCA is used for is important big picture information. When you get your weather forecast, they'll use designators for a line of storms, maybe from YBTR to DLP. You don't know where they are. You'll pull out your map and have a look. It's got each of the designators that they're going to use on a weather forecast is in there. Each of your weather forecast areas, area 40, area 44, area 84, are all marked on here. So when you get a weather forecast for your flight, and you'll be able to look at it, you need a forecast for area 40. It's also got important information. Okay, if we look at this here, all of that area shaded in there is VHF radio coverage at 5,000 feet. So in this area, we can be fairly sure that we're going to be able to talk to someone, Brisbane Centre, Melbourne Centre, on the VHF at 5,000 feet. Into this area here, 10,000 feet. And if we're in here, we've got no hope, no matter what height we're at, of getting VHF radio coverage. That can be very, very important. If you're using HF radios, it'll give you the HF radio frequencies for the area that you're in. All right, and also your flight watch areas, if you want to call flight watch on HF. Use the online version, guys. Don't bother trying to download a printed version. Don't use it for planning because the scale's a bit weird. And of course, always check validity. Last and definitely not least are your EFB maps. Now, if you're out there using an electronic flight bag, in this case, I've pulled up the runway, or the Android version of Oz Runways. Read the documentation before you use it to learn what it is that you're using. And many of them, certainly Oz Runway, produce a hybrid map. So where they can, they'll use the VTC. When you get outside of the VTC, they'll neatly butt the VTC and the VNC up together. When you get outside of the VNC coverage, you'll get the WAC. It'll be a seamless transition. The scales will look the same. And where they can overlay airspace on the WAC, they will. So this is sort of the best of every world. Providing your subscription's up to date, validity shouldn't be an issue, but make sure they're legal for the type of operation that you're using. Most times these are not legal as your only form of navigation. If something was to go wrong and someone was to ask you what you used as a map and your only form was an EFB, you may find yourself in a little bit of trouble. Certainly not primary navigation, certainly not IF navigation. So just refresh yourself with what's legal for your type of information. Make sure your subscription's up to date. But these guys, I mean, look, we all use them. They can be the best of both worlds. Alrighty, that's a quick coverage of the sort of maps you're going to see as part of your navigation training. Expect to use most of those when we're doing the flight planning. As always, questions and comments in the comment section below or by email.